Hey, what's up, guys? This is Michael Ramirez. Enrolled in the Full Stack Development Program at San Diego Code School, and I am currently. This video would be for week number 9. Um, However, I would like to mention that I'm actually a little bit ahead in the curriculum right now, so technically like in week 10 or week 11, I believe. But um, anyways, I've been feeling actually pretty stressed out, to be honest. This week has been incredibly challenging and mostly has to do with just the material and the module that I've been going over this week. So I've been going over the React 200 module, which essentially covers React with Redux, and watch a ton of content on Redux as far as like how it works, generally how the data flow goes through React with Redux and having like its own store, and essentially how the state gets updated with the store using by dispatching actions and taking in the initial state along with an action in order to update the state of the store. Um, it's been a lot of I feel like it's been very challenging because there's a lot of moving parts in specifically two of the projects within this module. In the beginning, it was just essentially covering a lot of content on Redux, like 30 videos worth. And it was very good. It was actually very informative. I took a ton of notes. I really do think it really helped me understand how Redux works, but understanding it and applying it is definitely two different things, I feel like. So that being said, I felt like the biggest challenge I faced this week was literally getting through one of my most recent projects, which was building out the weather application, which essentially involved working with an API called Open Weather and essentially populating the current weather for a given city. So, for example, San Diego, when you search for San Diego, it's supposed to essentially give you the temperature, it's supposed to give you the low and the high temperature for the day, the humidity, the wind speed, etc. And then on top of it, how to build out search history for the weather apps. So if you search San Diego first and then you search another city like La Jolla or Torrey Pines, then essentially it would keep track of those cities that you searched by just simply putting the city name along with the date and time that you searched it. And then another feature of it too was actually having a few cities preloaded like into the weather app. So major cities such as like Tokyo, San Diego, London, New York, cities like that. So essentially the way it would work is once you just click on one of those buttons that contains a preloaded city, then essentially it automatically gives you the weather that day for that city, which is pretty cool. But the biggest challenge I had with it was just simply wiring up all the components within the application, because you have several components. You have three main features, which are the ones I just mentioned: searching, search history, and essentially the preloaded cities, right? But what I mean by why it was hard to wire everything up was literally knowing that, okay, which component is going to handle what things. And for example, if you have like the preloaded cities, for example, you'd have a preloaded city attached to like a button, let's say. That button will shoot off a function called like handle change. It'll essentially grab that city name based on the one you clicked on. Then essentially that function will invoke another function that dispatches your action, and then it'll go to the back end, make that API call to open weather data. It'll grab that weather data information, return it back to the front end, then it gets thrown into a reducer And then your reducer essentially does the work of updating the state of the store, and then essentially at that point everything gets re-rendered on the page. And now, since the store has been updated, now you actually have the current information that you're looking for. Um, and that's just one component. So I think the hardest part literally was not only wiring it up, but I definitely got bogged down as far as like when something wasn't working properly. I had to literally take a step back and just think to myself, okay, I know that I'm going to have a component, and then I'm going to have an action, and then I'm going to have a reducer, and then I'm going to have the store that gets updated. So there's like that pattern that I think is what's crucial to understand with Redux. And it's important because not only are you going to need to know that pattern just to generally build out your components and wire everything up, but more importantly, when it comes to troubleshooting, and actually, probably the best way to go about troubleshooting it is to actually work in that reverse order. So if you have component, action, reducer, store, then essentially you might want to work backwards where you're like, okay, like did the state ever get updated? Okay, it didn't. Okay, like let's go to the reducer. Did the reducer do what it needed to do? Or if that looks okay, then okay, did the action ever get dispatched properly? And if it did it actually dispatch the correct action? And then if that's still not it, then maybe it's all the way back to your component where maybe like there's just some syntax error somewhere or something like that. But that being said, I was able to overcome that challenge, like I said, by being able to just step back and think about how the data is flowing from the time something gets clicked to the action that gets dispatched, to the reducer it goes to how the store will have its state updated, etc. And most importantly, working with one component or one feature, I should say, at a time. You definitely don't want to be trying to troubleshoot different things at different times because you'll just be all over the place, and it'll be very hard to keep your thoughts and just your thoughts organized as to what's going on with the issue. So I was able to overcome that by just kind of just staying on track with that, following that pattern, working my way backwards to the pattern if I needed to, and that definitely helped. So the most important new thing that I learned, of course, was working with Redux. It's my very first time working with Redux. I already had previously worked with React a few weeks ago, so that was good exposure to it. But as far as using Redux, it's totally different compared to just doing passing state and props down in a typical React application. So when you have a store, I feel like there's definitely takes a lot more time to get everything wired up properly. So the store is holding your state. But the good thing about it is Redux, I feel like it would be useful if you want a more scalable application, or if you have just like several components that all need access to the store. So in that respect, I feel like just Redux overall was the most important new thing I learned. And I can see why it's very useful to be able to utilize it. And the cool thing is, like, you don't have to use it with just React. You can utilize it with like Angular or whatever other language or library you like to use. And as far as maybe some advice that I have for anybody who's learning this topic is just take your time. Make sure you understand what actions are, which are JavaScript objects. Make sure you understand what action creators are, which literally just sounds like what it is. It creates an action. Make sure you understand what reducers are and what they do. Make sure you understand what a store is and how state gets updated, things of that nature. And literally just understand all the connections in between those things. So just essentially learning the data flow of how something works. And I feel like as long as you have that fundamental understanding, then it'll be much easier for you to put together your own set of components or your own Redux application for that matter, and help you be able to wire things up properly the way they should be. And um, definitely too, like if you're already feeling pretty comfortable with it and maybe you want to like take it up a notch a little bit, you could start, learning about other useful features like the React router and how that handles dynamic routing versus you creating static routes on your backend server. So I feel like it's definitely a very cool thing to be learning, but you should definitely take your time, try to go at your own pace. Ask questions if you don't understand something, whether it's like in person or online. Just be able to utilize resources as much as you can. Tons of resources online too, which is always good. But generally speaking, I feel like for me, that if you have somebody there in person that you can ask a question to, then that's actually, nothing gets better than that, frankly, because you might just get a better and more simplified explanation as to what is doing what. So that being said, I'm almost towards the end of React 200. Currently working on the last project starting today called Movie Finder. So I still will be working on that over these next few days. And then that being said, I'll actually will be finished with the core curriculum for the full stack development program. However, I'm not quite done yet, because after that is over, then the final group projects will begin, and that'll be roughly a month long. So I'm feeling excited to start those group projects, a little anxious to be honest, but more importantly, I feel like this process has been so far like a roller coaster of emotions. You have weeks where you're like struggling to get through stuff and you're being very challenged, and then there's maybe the next week is not so bad because maybe the content you're covering maybe just clicks more for you, or maybe it's just not that difficult for you to get overall. So you constantly just have this state of emotions where it's just like up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. Which goes back to something that I've been reiterating through all of these videos, is that it's so important to become comfortable being uncomfortable. There's no way you're going to be able to go inside a software engineering job or take on a very difficult boot camp with just the thought and impression that it's going to be easy. Like, there's just no way. It's going to be very challenging, and that's the intention, is to have it be challenging so you can learn to struggle, learn to be resourceful, and learn to practice all your skills, your technical communication, your non-technical communication, stuff like that. So it's been overall so far a really good experience. And just as a little side note too, I am looking forward to a hackathon that's supposed to be hosted by Tilium Labs, which is a company based down here in San Diego, I think closer to the Torrey Pines, La Jolla area, I believe. That hackathon will be going on around mid this month, like around the 17th, I believe, that weekend. So also looking forward to being a part of that. Looking forward to see how that's going to turn out, and I'm sure I'm going to learn some pretty cool stuff there as well. With that being said, this week has been eventful and interesting. Definitely lots of ups and downs, but that's the nature of it, right? This is exactly what I signed up for, and I'm glad it's this way because it's honestly what I was actually expecting, so it's good. But yeah, until next week, I'll see you guys then.